Hey YouTube, welcome back. I've got another build here for you. This is the result of one of these theory crafting weeks that we've been hosting on Discord and on Twitch. So this week, we built around a unique bow called Shadow String. So Shadow String doesn't have too much text on it, and while we were trying to figure out what to do with it, it was very difficult to find a good idea. So what we ended up playing was a build that tried to make use of Shift for the various buffs that Shift uses, and we tried to use Smoke Bomb as well for the various buffs that Smoke Bomb provides, along with the bonus damage that Umbral Blades gets when standing in a Smoke Bomb. So my own build didn't use Shadow String particularly well, and I ended up swapping off it. So I'm going to link two different build planners for you for how to build this following character, but I want to share this character with you because I failed the build challenge, but I think I made a very cool build. When it comes to Frostbite Umbral Blades, I don't see much else out there on YouTube, on Discord, or on the forums. I see a couple ideas here and there, but nothing that really captured what I was trying to do here by scaling Frostbite damage, using the unofficial Frostbite set of Frostbite Shackles along with Snowdrift unique boots, and then scaling, I guess, just all elemental damage over time. So we're not actually using any bow skills. We're not using anything like Dark Quiver to justify the use of Shadow String, which is why I think I failed the build challenge, even though we made a sweet build. So let's go ahead and walk you through it here. The main thing that I want to point out is just like, I don't see other people building Umbral Blades in this way, like building around Frostbite, because it has such a weird type of conversion to it. It converts shock chance into Frostbite chance. And there's not any shock chance at all on Umbral Blades, and it's hard to get it in other places. So you're kind of doing weird things with your skills, with your gear, with your mastery, and with your blessings in order to get as much Frostbite chance as possible. And that's influenced some of our other decisions for the build as well. So strictly speaking, if you want to play the best version of this build, I think the best version is just using a Smoke Weaver, which is the reduced cooldown of Shift, getting that with LP on it, and getting chance to shock on hit as a suffix on your LP Smoke Weaver, and then using a Bastion of Honor. But this is one of the few times that I've been playing in softcore, so I eschewed the Bastion of Honor, and instead of having maximum block chance, I got to use some pretty interesting weapons. So Rainbow Edge doesn't see play very often. There's not many good uses for it. Even if you get like 2 or 3 LP, it's like, okay, then what are you going to do with it? But most importantly, this last line of text, chance to shock, ignite, and chill on hit, it goes from 25 to 75. This is a unique item that requires level 30, so it's a low-level unique item, and the LP level of this is 10, which means, supposedly, it's very, very easy to get a Rainbow Edge with 1, 2, maybe even 3 LP on it. So if you can get one of these with maybe some damage over time, maybe cold damage, and specifically with a suffix of tier 6 or tier 7 shock on hit, you have, all of a sudden, a lot of shock chance that's being converted into your Frostbite chance. So that's the idea of the build. The other main idea of this character is with Umbral Blades. Most of the time when you see Umbral Blades, you see people taking Sword Thrower. And even if they're not using Shadow Daggers, they're using Sword Thrower because they're proccing it off of Shadows, which you'll note that we don't have any Shadow synergy here. We're not using Sword Thrower, and we aren't using the explosions as well. So the projectile behavior of the Umbral Blades that you've seen already in the clips is we're throwing out all of these, and we don't have the recall as part of our rotation for holding down right click, and then they recall to us every time we shift. So this is our damage pattern of like we can hit, we can apply some ailments, and then we shift into an enemy. So for example, if there's a Diamond Matron standing over here, we can bait out the orbital laser that she throws, and then when she's ready to cast it, we can jump on top of her and get a big proc of damage. Once again, I feel like all the builds that I showed you, this build blows up Diamond Matrons, and it feels very good. So we are holding down right click like this, and then we dash into a pack of enemies or into one big bad monster. So the rest of this build, aside from the Frostbite Shackles, getting as much Frostbite and freeze rate multiplier on our build as possible, there's a couple other things that we need to talk about before we run through everything. And I think the big thing is, first of all, we get throwing attack speed on the chest piece. Acid Flask levels themselves don't do anything for us, but we really want as much throwing attack speed as possible because there's just not that much of it available. Like, we can get it on our rings, but our rings want to have a -3 mana cost sealed somewhere. And we also want freeze ray multi, and we also want some dexterity to get our snowdrifts going faster, and just because dexterity is a nice way of scaling offense and defense at the same time. And we also want elemental damage over time and throwing speed. So like, there's a lot of good combinations for what we can put on the prefixes for our rings here. So that's thing number one, is getting the throwing attack speed on the body armor here. And the second thing that I want to show to you is this node here. I guess both of these nodes. Let's talk about these two nodes here. So in the Umbral Blades skill tree, you see that we have +1 over here. We do have the Twilight Assault for the 3rd throw before return, just to get as many blades up as possible. This is kind of a defining feature for us. But the other bits are these 3 nodes here. And this is kind of like the bread and butter of our build. And this is something that you don't see normally in other Umbral Blades characters. So we have 4 points here. This is recall blades deal more damage, but blades thrown out deal less damage. So the blades that we're throwing are 40% less, but the blades that we recall are double damage. So it's 100% more damage, right? So most often when you're using things like Sword Thrower, when you're using things like the Explodey, you're not going to get the recall because people just don't build around the recall for Umbral Blades. For the most part, the first step in your Umbral Blades character is to remove the recall as fast as possible. So this is one defining feature. Second defining feature is one that I already talked about. We have a recall on shift, not as part of the rotation of throwing as the rotation of throwing the skill by holding it on right click. I tried that. I didn't like it at all. I think this is much, much better. And one of the reasons that I like it so much better is this node, which ended up being an all-star for our character here. So Soul Thief not only gives us some throwing attack speed, which of course we want as much as possible, but it's ward gained on hit on recall. And it's not per use. And it's not for like hitting one enemy. It's for as many enemies as you can jump through. So the biggest number that I've gotten, so I guess we have 168 ward retention because we're wearing our Frostbite shackles, which give us ward retention per uncapped cold res. But that just helps us retain the ward after we get the ward. But going from 0 and dashing through a pack of enemies, if there's a bunch of enemies standing over here and I dash through them, the biggest number I've seen is 13,000. So we have a large chunk of ward generation every 2.7 seconds on shift, and we're dashing into a pack of enemies, and we want to hit as many of them possible with that recall, because that recall has a big more damage multiplier on it, and also, every time that we're passing through an enemy, we're getting a huge chunk of ward. So I mentioned Bastion of Honor. I think the best way to play this character is just to have a Bastion, because you're basically a melee character and you want to be dashing right into the middle of a pack of monsters. And then Smoke Weaver would go pretty well, because Smoke Weaver gives you the reduced shift cooldown. So at high end, with really min-max gear, it's probably a Smoke Weaver build. But double Rainbow Edge is pretty cool, because Rainbow Edge gives us the 40% glancing blow chance. So we have all of our glancing blow nodes here, a couple nodes in our base tree, some glancing blow here, and then as we start hitting things, very quickly our glancing blow chance can be over 100, also with the help of our smoke bomb. Taking a look at the gear next, we have a pretty cool helmet, which I really like, because it has 3 LP and it landed everything that I wanted on it. So it's pretty good if you ask me. Realistically, you're looking for a helmet with as much cooldown recovery speed as possible. Things like health, percent health, vitality, crit avoid, those are all excellent for you as well. I would be looking for vitality. Having less than 2,000 life, I don't think is a great choice, even if you're in softcore. I think we're still looking for more than 2,000 life. So, some kind of helmet along with this. Listen, you get a 3 LP Snowblind, use it. It's cool. It has the cold res and the freeze ray multi that helps us scale our ward, and then the freeze ray multi helps with snowdrifts. But realistically, the cooldown recovery speed and health is what you're looking for on a Snowblind. Next up, we're looking at the chest piece. At the very beginning, I told you about the throwing attack speed. This would be better than the percent increased damage while wielding a sword, because if you're going to get any percent increased damage, you'd much rather have something that says elemental damage over time, because elemental damage over time rolls much, much higher than a generic percent increased damage does. So if you're going to get any kind of percent increased damage, you're looking for elemental damage over time, which is why instead we're going for this throwing attack speed here. Next up, we're looking at our belt. Elemental damage over time rolls on a belt. We want that. percent health, hybrid health as well. This belt is not good enough. This belt should be better. Ideally, we would have the cleanse modifier sealed as like our 5th suffix. And then our 2nd prefix there would be the freezing concoction. The freezing concoction does scale. It gives you extra freeze rate multi, and then it gives you freezing concoction on potion use. And that is a great way of juicing up any Frostbite build. So that really should be in this build. It would give me much more damage, but I just don't have a belt that I can replace this belt with right now. Frostbite Shackles, we've got this thing here. If you have LP, you're looking for throwing speed, or I guess you can get percent damage over time, or just hybrid health, frailty on hit, things like that would help you. For snowdrifts, dexterity, movement speed, hybrid health, crit avoid, those kinds of things are what you're looking for with LP if you can land them. And then for our relic here, this relic has low modifiers on it, but let me highlight to you why I'm using it. I wanted to have as much freeze rate multi as possible. Freeze rate multi is kind of like Frostbite effect if you're looking at your snowdrift boots over here. And then we want as much elemental damage over time as possible to make up for the fact that we're not getting percent increased elemental damage over time on a chest piece or on a helmet or anything like that, because we're foregoing damage while wielding a sword, which would otherwise be our source of percent increased damage. So that's what we're looking for. You'll see that there's a sealed suffix on this as well. That +1 to Umbral Blades feels great because it allows us to put 1 more point into Soul Thief here. If I had +2 or +3, I would be looking to put an extra point up here into Cold Snap. And beyond that, I don't think there's much that I would want to be taking. So maybe 22 is the highest that I would want to be going to, just to grab this extra point. But realistically, I guess you can grab this point too for Dusk Hunter. This will give you like an extra blade every once in a while. But just the +1, I think is pretty clean. Because the +1 means that you can have a tier 1 sealed modifier, and then I have your other 2 prefixes for the high impact damage modifiers there. Elemental resistance and cold resistance mean that we can have as much as much ward retention as possible with Frostbite, so that's why those suffixes are there. Obviously, you want some kind of frailty on hit, which comes from our amulet. So shock on hit comes from our 2 weapons, so they should have LP, they should have more shock on them. Remember, shock also rolls on your amulet as well, so shock and ignite both happen there, so shock is what we want, so we have shock on hit here. For our relics, because we're a little bit low on our health, we're looking for a bunch of health idols, and we're also looking for shock on hit, because 17, 19, 18% chance to shock on hit really adds up, and it's hard for us to get shock in many places. So we have shock here, we have shock in our 2 weapons. You'll see when I get to the blessings that we also have a bit of shock here as well. This 96% chance to shock on hit, and then Frostbite Shackles has that 129 chance to apply Frostbite on hit right here. So we're looking for as much Frostbite on hit as possible, which is why we have these idols with shock on hit. So this is specifically what we're looking for. Last up is Throne of Ambition. You've seen builds that use this even if they don't have fire or cold damage in them, but thankfully we're a cold damage build, so we get to take advantage of both the offense and the defense of Throne. So last up, let's talk about the blessings themselves. We've got some weird blessings going on, and this character, honestly, didn't feel good until level 98. Because I had to farm up from solo all of the different unique items that we're using, the LP items that we're using, all these different blessings, and then we have to actually go to Stolen Lance and to Blood, Frost, and Death just to get the unique items that we were looking for. So there was a lot of work that went into this character. So for the blessings, Black Sun, it should just be Void Res, nothing special going on here. We don't need crit multi or anything like that. We also don't need Throwing Leech because again, we're a elemental damage over time build, not a throwing build. For Ending the Storm, we want as much shock chance as possible, so this gives us 1 extra Frostbite on hit, because remember, shock gets converted into our Frostbite chance. You could get percent increased cold damage here, but the shock is substantially more valuable for us. Reign of Dragons, we're just looking for all resistance, because we can cap our crit avoid in other places, and generally speaking, just having the percent all res is more value. Especially when we want to really overcap our cold res to get some extra ward retention if we can. Next up is Age of Winter. We'd like to get as much cold shred as possible, so this is very high value for this. We could get a chance to apply Frostbite on hit, which would be good as well, but as a unique source of cold shred, I think you really want this, even if you do end up with cold penetration on your amulet, like I have here. Last up is some flat armor, up to 320 armor from Spirits of Fire. You could go for endurance if you'd like to, but endurance really shines when you don't also have 12,000 ward. So this build has a ton of generation of ward to it. It's got a really nice playstyle to it with a high amount of dodge and high uptime of those buffs from shift and whatnot. And then silver shrouds from our passives and from smoke bomb here. So that, along with decoy, gives us a really active playstyle. And like, you know, my character, we only have 20% endurance. I'm not feeling too bad about that. Having like a couple thousand, 3, 4, 5, 12,000 ward means that the relative benefit of having percent endurance is lower than it would be. Yeah, you'd like to cap it, but I think there's other modifiers that are just like higher value for us in a build like this. I snuck in a comment during the blessing section, but I think I want to reiterate this real quick. During this build competition, which I totally failed, by the way, because I didn't end up using Shadow String, but I like my character anyways. I specifically wanted to play a character that did not come out of the gate blasting, right? I didn't want a character that was easy to put together. I didn't want a character that like you just slap on some white items and you blast through the game and everything comes together very easily. I specifically wanted to play a build that was weird. And I wanted to play a build that was very gear dependent, very unique dependent, blessing dependent, something that would be a slow burn so that it would hold my attention for a longer period of time. That's what I wanted to do. What I ended up creating was perhaps the worst League start character you've ever seen. This is a terrible first character. This character felt good by about level 98. It's a sweet character. I like it a lot. The playstyle is great. I'm really glad that I finally played this character and that I spent the time investigating it. It's a cool character to have put together, and I love farming with it. It's so fast. It's got good boss damage as well. But it falls in this category of builds that I have a hard time recommending, because it's more of a build like, this is a thing you can do. It's not really a League start build. It's not going to one-shot any bosses. It has a tremendous amount of gear requirements that go into it. But if you're looking for a character that is a slow burn and then really pays you off for investing gear into it, this is a good character for you. I know that sounds like a weird thing to say, but if that's the kind of slow burn that you're looking for in Last Epoch, this character is unique. I haven't seen other people play it before. We've got some nodes here that just like haven't been explored in the past. This backstab node feels really good to play with. This huge amount of ward generation from Soul Thief, getting 12,000 ward with like, I don't know, the ward retention coming in from a unique item that I want to use anyways. This character has been a pleasure to assemble and to put together, and it's been an excellent thought experiment. Is it the best build in the world? No. But it might be the best build in the world to like play, to put together, to build, because that part of the build has felt excellent. In any case, if you have any questions about the build, you can always leave those in the comment section of this video here. You can always drop by Twitch Live, twitch.tv/fearthepig, where I stream almost every day playing some Last Epoch, among some other variety games too. So, if you have questions, leave them there. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time.